Folks, 2023 has been a pretty good year for us CK3 fans, wouldn't you agree? We're looking at a situation where Tools and Tournaments comes out and is in a really stellar state and has just been approved with a patch release just today that fixes a whole lot of bugs, including the legendary Hunt one. This is good news in general, but there is obviously more. The update cycle for CK3 is much tighter than in previous years, where we were going dry for quite a long time. The update cycle in 2023 is promising us Wards and Wardens, a small event pack, in Q3, and then in Q4 Legacy of Persia, a flavor pack for everything in Persia. And indeed, today Wards and Wardens actually got a release date and a quick overview over what we can expect in the DLC itself. And in this video, I will tell you everything that you need to know. Wards and Wardens, the second event pack for CK3, is scheduled to release on the 22nd of August. And it promises to bring a whole lot of events related to especially childhood, but also your relationship with your children, but also a small number of mechanical additions. The DLC's content will be focused on childhood personality and education events, hostage exchanges, more intricate relations with your children in general, the funky eccentric trait, and a new activity that lets you participate in adult education and maybe even polish up your education trait. From the Steam page, we can already see a number of events that are related to you either being or having a hostage, or you being or having a child. What exactly this is and how many there are is of course something that we can't be sure of, so let's just skip over that for now. The big hope definitely has to be that this will enrich both the gameplay as a child and as a parent, as sometimes it can be quite a slog. On the other hand, when it comes to the mechanical implementation of hostages, there is quite a bit more information here. Hostages won't be what you might think they are when you hear the term. Rather than forced holding of a person to ransom hostage ship in the Middle Ages was a political and legal status that was absolutely widespread. Hostages were essentially transactional guarantees. In this case, the developers have zeroed in on the most common reason for hostages to be exchanged, as a means to guarantee a peace treaty. To put it bluntly, what this essentially means is that hostages will be acting as a natural and organic form of a non-aggression pact. You exchange one of your children, they exchange one of theirs, and of course now you have a reason not to attack each other. In almost all cases, hostages will be children, but that doesn't need to be the case at all times. Harming a hostage will be a significant diplomatic incident, but you could use it to threaten your former enemies to never challenge you again. I have to say that personally, I'm incredibly excited for this. In CK2 we did of course have non-aggression pacts, but they were something that you largely just negotiate or get via a marriage. Having it be something that is implemented through actual characters, in this case hostages, is definitely something that feels much more natural. Any ruler that you have a hostage from will suffer significant debuffs and penalties should they try and attack you, and any wardens attacking home courts also suffer similar debuffs. So hostages present one of the strongest forms of deterrent possible. And it's not just that, it obviously also means that you might gain some edge over the hostage itself. This will be handled via a new form of hook, the hook in perpetuity. There are currently two types of hook in the game already, strong and weak. The latter are the type of hooks that you would get if you were to, for example, manipulate a person in some way. They are single use and can be refused at cost. Strong hooks, on the other hand, can be used multiple times and in a range of scenarios, but are also much rarer. Perpetual hooks are a new sort of hook, which wardens can get on a hostage who they treat well, and represent something of a middle ground. They are refusable like weak hooks, but also permanent like a strong hook. This essentially means that there is an immediate effect of getting a hostage, which is basically non-aggression pact, and then a long-term effect. Should that hostage actually inherit a title anywhere, you would all of a sudden find yourself in possession of a perpetual hook on a person that is actually quite powerful. But, as mentioned, this can only be the case if the hostages are treated well, giving you an incentive to maybe not be as rude as you normally would be. Listen, you don't always need to insult the people living in your court, okay? While the hostage system sounds quite exciting, there is of course more coming with this update as well, namely the eccentric trait. In CK2, you would have insane and possessed characters everywhere who did all kinds of wacky things. CK3's takes are a bit more grounded when it comes to this. Lunatic, for example, was used increasingly loosely in CK2, ending up as an umbrella for anything ranging from slightly kooky to genuine mental illness, but CK3 sticks much more rigidly to the latter. Now this is where the eccentric trait comes in, as a trait dedicated to the slightly odd. This trait is meant to group some of the more unusual situations that you would find under this new personality trait, giving them both more reason to happen for a certain character, but critically also barring those characters who wouldn't engage in such strange distractions from doing so. At the moment, we don't have any more information what this specifically means, but if you've been playing CK3 this entire time, then you might remember that a few patches back there was an epidemic of impalers. Everybody and their mums just created forests of impaled people. That sounds like something to me at least that might fit the eccentric trait quite well. Be that as it may, there's also something else coming, and that is Midwives. In Wards and Wardens, instead of just doing events for children and for those that interact with them, they have also added another fresh layer of childhood content. Wet nurses held an interesting status amongst the medieval court, and adding this court position adds another layer of intricacy to the trials and tribulations of raising a child. To me, the most interesting part of the wet nurse position is the added possibility for child development events. Gating these events behind a wet nurse and making it so that you only get them if you really care for your children and want to see these events is a good step, and most importantly makes it so, of course, that you need to spend more money on the education of your children, which previously was relatively free. But of course, education doesn't end or start with your core tutor and your wet nurse and then you're 16 and that is it. Ultimately, it is a lifelong process. CK3 so far hasn't really depicted this. Previously, once you had come of age, an education type and rank was assigned to you, and that was that. You, aged 16, were as educated as you would ever become. Since this is doubtlessly far too rigid, the developers have added the adult education activity that now gives players a chance to tickle their brains at a center of learning, in hope that they can actually upgrade their education trait to a higher level. This in itself is actually great, because it means that there is still potential going forward, and I'm actually quite happy looking at this. If you've seen my Tools and Tournaments review, then you will know that I thought the activities were deeply unbalanced. But seeing the hosting university visit having a downtime of 20 years tells me that this will probably be quite powerful, but also fairly rare. Interestingly enough, the developers also mentioned that if you were to already have the highest education trait, you might still be able to gain something here. What exactly that is, we have no idea, but we should be learning about this next week when they are talking about the adult education activity in the next developer diary. Wards and Wardens, the next event pack, will be releasing on the 22nd of August, and this was everything that we knew about it so far. I have to say that I'm actually quite positive about this. The last event pack has been received with deep negativity, and I want to say that yep, there were some unbalanced and some broken things in there, but I think most of the negativity came from the fact that we were all starving for some bigger content. Now this right here is perfect to fill the gap until Legacy of Persia comes around. One thing that really jumps out to me in the content promised in this update, be it the additional childhood events, the hostage mechanic, or the adult education activity, is the fact that this is essentially a dream come true for tall players. So players that build up their domain rather than blobbing. Tours and Tournaments has been a bit of a mixed bag for them. On the one hand, the DLC added lots of things to do that aren't just pure conquest, but on the other hand, it also fundamentally changed the building system, and the latest patch especially reined in various exploits related to building tall. This has definitely made the life of the tall player significantly more challenging. This DLC, however, seems like a dream come true for playing tall. You can claim hostages to guarantee peace, be left alone, and then later on get hooks you can use for money payments, with which you finance building up your domain. Being able to refine the education trait of your character past the age of 16 also should help a lot if your genius heir manages to get a truly terrible education level. So all in all, I'm quite happy to see that playstyle getting catered to once more. Let's just hope that the content of Wards and Wardens will indeed measure up to what was promised here in this Vision Dev Diary. Let me know in the comments what you think about the release date that has been announced right here, as well as the features that have been discussed. I'll leave you right here, and I will see you later, Alligator.